"Stop the elevator." The words hit the Gala before the music could cover them. Glasses paused mid-air. A line of black suits turned as one. The private car stood open, chrome doors waiting. A woman in a silver dress had one foot inside. I said, "Stop the elevator." Daniel Cross didn't raise his voice the second time. He didn't have to. He was the security guard people looked through. Gray jacket. Clipped badge. Clean shoes he paid for himself. The new staff called him overnight. Some of them didn't know he had once run this floor, trained half their team, wrote the evacuation plan. Everyone kept in a drawer and forgot. He knew where the service doors stuck in summer, which banquet tables had uneven legs, which light in the north corridor always blew first when the building was full. He knew this lobby the way people know their own kitchen. "Sir, you're out of line." The front of house manager stepped into his view, gentle smile, hard eyes. "You're not assigned to this entrance, ma'am." Daniel said to the woman at the elevator, "Do not step in that car." She looked over her shoulder. Clara Vance, the CEO everyone had whispered about for a week. Money on the guest list, board members in the balcony, charity banners, cameras ready for a speech. Her expression said she was used to rooms opening when she walked in. "Who is this?" she asked, without looking at Daniel. "Temporary coverage," the manager said. "We'll move him." "That's not accurate," Daniel said. "I was head of security here until last year." He didn't add what came next. He didn't say a new owner brought a new favorite, and the new favorite wanted a clean slate. Harold Stone approached from the far side of the lobby. Tailored suit, earpiece, the tone of a man who never had to repeat himself. "You're off post, Cross." He put a hand on Daniel's elbow like a reminder. "Step away." Daniel didn't step. His eyes were on the private elevator. Inside, against the side rail, a covered cart took up space it shouldn't have. The linen drape hung wrong. The bumper skirt showed a scuff he had seen only on the carts used in the back corridors. 2 attendants should have flanked it if it were legit. No one stood there. The door had been called for a single VIP with a cart already inside. He had worked too many nights to pretend this was normal. "Ma'am," he said to Clara. "Please." "1 minute." Her heel paused over the threshold. It wasn't fear, it was annoyance. She cut a look toward Harold. "Explain," she said. Harold didn't blink. "We have no threat. He's on a performance plan. That's not the question." Clara's focus came back to Daniel. "What are you alleging?" "I'm not alleging anything," Daniel said. He kept it flat. "I'm asking you not to enter that car." He added, lower this time. "The rider log shows a call made with ID code BLP019. That series was decommissioned last year when the bellhop roster changed. Nobody should have that card anymore. And those cartwheels? They leave black scuffs, the kind only seen on freezer-hauling carts, not VIP service trays." A ripple of polite laughter moved through the cluster of donors near the bar. A woman with a string of pearls leaned to her date and whispered. The date looked past Daniel like he was a stand for a sign, not a person. A server with a tray shifted to avoid his shadow, eyes down. The concierge studied the floor plan on her clipboard as if it needed urgent attention. The orchestra leader set his baton on the stand and checked his watch. This was the part that knifed deeper than any words. The air itself made room around him. The way people physically adjusted so they would not brush against him. The way faces went blank. He was present, and not there at the same time. In this lobby, in the place where, 2 summers ago, he had cleared a smoke-filled kitchen and carried a child out of the service hall because the fire doors didn't seal and no one else could get through. They had framed a photo from that night. They had hung it behind the front desk. When the new leadership took over, the frame disappeared. No one told him where it went. "Cross," Harold said, You are done here for the night. Back office, now. Daniel took a breath that hurt on the way in. I'll go as soon as I see that car empty, he said. On what grounds? Clara asked. He gave her what she deserved, not a theory, but a fact. That cart doesn't belong to your team. The timing is off. The rider log shows a single entry. He stopped there. No jargon, no lecture, just the thing that didn't fit. Harold stepped closer. You don't speak to her. The words were smooth, not loud. You speak to me. Daniel nodded once. Then I'm speaking to you. Don't let her get in that car. The manager's smile lost its edges. We have guests, she said. You are creating a scene. I'm preventing one, Daniel said. Clara's gaze slid to the cart. For the first time, uncertainty touched her face. Not fear. Calculation. Clear it, she said to Harold. We do not pause whip movement for a contractor's hunch, Harold replied. It's my event, she said. Clear it. Harold hesitated a fraction, then raised 2 fingers to a junior guard. The kid in the dark suit moved with the confidence of someone borrowing it. He reached into the car to pull the cart back. The linen shifted. Nothing dramatic. Nothing for a camera. Just a small change in weight that put every nerve in Daniel's arms on alert. He stepped half a pace forward without thinking. Back, Harold said. I'm helping him set the brake, Daniel said, and put his hand on the cart's corner, low, steady. He had done this 1,000 times. If a wheel was off, the cart would skate and catch someone's ankle. He kept it straight, pulled it clear, and stopped it in the doorway. Show me, Clara said. Harold was already moving to lift the cover. His hand paused over the linen. He glanced at the nearest donor, at the phones, at the eyes. He made a choice. We'll check it in the service hall, he said. Not on the carpet. Daniel didn't argue. He guided the cart out of the car. The doors slid together. The private elevator stood closed again, blank metal. Take him, Harold said. 2 guards, he didn't recognize, closed in on Daniel's shoulders. Not rough, not kind. Back office. Daniel looked at Clara. I'm doing my job, he said. She held his eyes for the first time. There was no warmth in it. There was no anger either. It was the look of someone deciding how a piece fits on the board. If this is nothing, she said, you will never work here again. And if it's not, Daniel asked. What happens then? Her mouth tightened. Then I'll listen. They rolled the cart toward the service corridor. The crowd relaxed a fraction, the conversation starting again in careful fragments. The orchestra leader lifted his arm, then let it fall when the manager shook her head. A pair of donors took a photo with the banner, angling their bodies to crop Daniel out of the shot as he passed. The service door swung shut behind him. The lobby sound cut off like a hand over a radio. Back here, the air always smelled like bleach on tile and hot metal from the kitchen. Light steady. Nothing to hide behind. He stopped next to a stainless table. Here, he said. Do it here. Harold didn't remove the cover. He pulled the cart closer to the wall and parked himself between it and Daniel. You don't set procedure, he said. Procedure used to be mine to set, Daniel said. It kept 900 guests calm the night the lights went out during the wedding upstairs. You took credit for that in a staff email. You're done, Harold said. The new guards turned Daniel toward the hall that led to the back office. As they walked, 3 banquet staff pushed racks past him without a word. A line cook paused at the swinging door, saw him, and moved back to let everyone else through before he slipped out, head down. 2 door hosts looked over Daniel's shoulder and then at their shoes, as if eye contact would be a violation. He had felt it for months, how the people who knew him stopped saying his name in public. Not out of malice, out of caution, out of a small fear that noticing him would cost them something. If any of this sounds familiar to you being talked over in the room you helped keep together, I'd value hearing how you handled it. It helps to know who else has carried that weight. They reached the office. The manager stood ready with a paper and a pen. Sign acknowledging removal from shift, she said. I'm not refusing to sign, Daniel said. He read it. It was not a suspension. It was an immediate end of shift for cause. That's not policy. It is tonight, she said. Because I spoke? He asked. Because you created a scene, she said. Same smile. Same eyes. He signed. He had no interest in giving them an excuse to say he'd refused instruction. He put the pen down. Where's the cart now? Secured, she said. Out of your scope. Who's with Miss Vance? I am, Harold said from the doorway. Keep her off that elevator, Daniel said. You don't give me orders. Harold replied. I'm not giving an order, Daniel said. I'm telling you what I know. What do you know? Harold asked, almost amused. That something inside that car didn't belong to tonight, Daniel said. And that moving one step back from a bad outcome is still too late. Harold's mouth made what might have been a smile on another face. Go home, he said. Daniel looked at the small locker with his name on a strip of tape. He opened it and took only his jacket. He didn't want to give them the courtesy of watching him box up a life in front of them. On his way out, he passed the service stair. A junior guard he had trained 2 years ago stood at the landing, hands clenched, eyes flicking away, then back. You were right to stop it, the kid said under his breath. I saw the camera feed. It wasn't scheduled. Daniel kept walking. Look after your own, he said. Keep the night clean. The kid called after him, voice urgent. I already flagged it. Use code 77 on the radio. That triggers the concierge to call city response. Reinforcements will be on the way, sir. He pushed through the service door and stepped back into the edge of the lobby. The orchestra tried a few notes. The room wanted to pretend nothing had happened. It's what rooms like this do. Reset. Smile. Move the donors toward the bar. Clara stood 10 yards away with 3 board members. Her posture was control again. She was listening to a woman in a navy dress list. Names and timing. The private elevator door slid open and shut without passengers twice. The cart was gone. Daniel stayed where staff were not supposed to be seen, a little to the side. 1 foot over the tile line the manager always asked him to keep behind. He watched the doors. He watched the new guards trying to look unbothered. He watched Harold keep his gaze fixed on Clara, like the rest of the world was wallpaper. He had seen this exact thing before. Someone too certain walking toward a moving part that did not care who they were. He had pulled people back by the sleeve. He had taken a drink out of a hand and thrown it away. He had stepped between a guest and a decision they would never be able to undo. He had worn the anger that comes with saving someone who doesn't want to be saved. A boy in a tuxedo jacket ran past him toward the ballroom doors, calling out for an aunt. House staff turned him around. He pointed toward the registration table. His voice shook. Daniel watched the door hosts try to soothe him and fail. Clara's phone lit up. She checked the screen. Her face did not change, but her hand tightened on the device for a second before she slid it into her clutch. She said a few words to the board members and walked toward the staff hall with Harold at her side. Daniel didn't move. He looked at the private elevator again. The door opened to an empty car. One of the junior guards leaned in, then stepped back. He wasn't sure what he had expected to see. He only knew that the taste in his mouth did not change. He turned toward the revolving door. Outside, a slate of black cars lined the curb. Doormen in dark coats helped guests step onto the carpet. The street smelled like rain on warm pavement. The hotel awning held drops on its edge that fell in a steady line. Daniel's phone buzzed once in his pocket. A message from upstairs. a photo of a drawing on a hotel notepad, a square body with a badge, and a small boy next to it with messy hair. The caption read, "I made you taller this time. Come up when you can." He typed back, "I might be later than I said. Stay with Mrs. Allen. I'll knock before I come in." He put the phone away. He stood under the awning and watched the glass doors spin and spin. A valet brushed past his shoulder and didn't say excuse me. He had been the one people called when it broke. He had been the person you needed and couldn't replace. He was not that now. It was not the job title that did it. It was the way a room can agree you are furniture and not remember the day you were a wall. If stories like this speak to you, and you want more of them told straight, you can stay with this channel. So we meet again without searching for each other. Rain gathered at the cuff of his jacket. He checked the lobby again and stepped back through the side door. The service hallway held its same steady hum. A cartwheel squeaked somewhere he couldn't see. The office door was shut. He walked past it toward the narrow stairs that led to the mezzanine. From there, you could see into the ballroom without being seen. At the top, he stopped in the shadow and looked down. The orchestra began again, a soft reset. The host thanked sponsors. The manager smiled at the right times. Harold stood near the stage, eyes moving, jaw set. Clara wasn't in her seat. Daniel watched the private elevator doors open once more. They held for a count and closed again. He kept counting after they shut. He didn't have a reason. He didn't need one. He had the same feeling he had before a storm, when the lobby went quiet for 2 seconds, and everyone felt it, and no one said it. He stepped away from the railing and took the back stairs down. He didn't head for the exit. He took the corridor that ran behind the ballroom and followed it toward the loading dock. He knew where footsteps sounded wrong on concrete. He knew how a room felt when someone had just left it. He kept going. Daniel stepped out of the service hallway, his jacket damp at the collar, his badge still clipped, though the shift sheet had already erased his name. The ballroom noise pressed against the glass partitions like a tide. He stood where guests weren't supposed to notice him, but every angle of every glance made it clear they did. Clara Vance crossed the lobby with Harold 2 steps behind. Her stride was sharp, heel against marble, the kind of pace that said she was finished giving time to anyone beneath her. She stopped just close enough to Daniel that the guards flanking her could claim he was being watched. "You embarrassed me," she said. Her voice wasn't raised, but the volume of the lobby seemed to bend around it. Daniel kept his tone steady. "I stopped you from stepping into a car that wasn't secure." Her eyes cut sideways at Harold. "And your record says otherwise. Last year, performance decline. This year, disciplinary notes. Tonight, disruption of a high-profile event. Which version of you should I believe?" "You should believe the one who walked this floor longer than anyone here," Daniel answered. "And the one who saw something that didn't belong." Guests passed behind her, glances flicking, voices dropping. A couple in formal wear changed direction mid-step to avoid coming near him. A donor he once escorted out during a fire drill gave a smirk as if watching a street show. The sting wasn't in their words. It was in the weight of how easy it was for them to pretend he wasn't part of the building at all. Clara adjusted the strap of her clutch. "If there was an issue, it will be documented. If there wasn't, then you've cost me more than time." Harold added, "We'll process his removal. Effective, immediately." Daniel looked at them both. "You'll want to check who signed that elevator call." "We'll want you off our floor," Harold replied. For a moment, silence pressed between them. Daniel's throat was dry, but not from nerves. It was from the memory of the night he had carried smoke-stained children into this very lobby. Back then, reporters had asked his name. Staff had called him essential. Now their eyes skimmed past him like he was shadow. "I did my job," he said finally. "You did it at the wrong time," Clara answered. She turned and walked toward the ballroom. Harold followed. The crowd folded behind them, as if nothing had been said at all. Daniel left through the side corridor. The mezzanine stair groaned under his weight. Upstairs, a narrow hall led to the staff quarters rented by the night shift. He opened the door to a small room with 2 beds, 1 desk, and a window that faced the service lot. His son sat cross-legged on the bed, pencil in hand, sketchbook spread open. "You're late," Ethan said, without looking up. Daniel set his jacket on the chair. "I know." Ethan's pencil moved fast, shaping lines into a caped figure. "You always say 10 minutes. Then it's 20. Then you miss dinner." Daniel sat on the edge of the bed. "I had to stop something downstairs. People didn't like it." "Did you get fired?" Ethan asked. "Not officially," Daniel said. "But they don't want me near the lobby anymore." Ethan looked up then. His eyes were sharp, too old for his face. "That's not fair. It happens. You were the one they used to call when alarms went off." Daniel gave a tight smile. "Not tonight." The boy closed the sketchbook. "Mom always said you never looked away when something was wrong." Daniel's chest tightened. He pressed his hands together. She was right. From the window, the hum of the ballroom below carried faintly upward. Music, laughter, clinking glasses. Daniel's room might as well have been another world. "You'll tell me if you have to leave again?" Ethan asked. "I'll tell you," Daniel said. The boy nodded once, then lay back on the pillow. His sketchbook slid to the floor. Daniel picked it up and placed it on the desk. He stared at the drawing. 2 figures, one tall, one smaller, side by side. No color, just pencil lines pressed hard into paper. The hallway outside creaked. A staff runner hurried past, voice urgent on the phone. "She can't find the girl. She was supposed to be here already." Daniel stepped into the hall. "Who?" The runner didn't stop. "Clara's niece. She never came down." The sound of the ballroom faded. The air between walls felt heavier, as if the building itself had drawn a breath and held it. Daniel's stomach knotted. He went back into the room. Ethan was already asleep, one arm over his eyes. Daniel shut the door gently and stood in the dim light, listening to the faint echo of voices below. He couldn't shake the sense that what he had stopped wasn't finished. Not by a long stretch. The mezzanine corridor carried sound in fragments. A laugh caught, then cut. A phone rang, then silence. Daniel moved back toward the service stairs. He kept to the edge, unseen. From the landing, he could see the lobby again. Clara was there, phone pressed to her ear, face rigid. Harold whispered near her shoulder, calm in a way that felt forced. 2 junior guards hovered a step away. Their eyes kept darting to the private elevator. Daniel's pulse ticked faster. Clara lowered the phone. Her lips tightened before she spoke. "She never arrived." One of the guards swallowed. "Ma'am, we have staff checking all floors. She was supposed to be here an hour ago." Clara's voice didn't rise, but it cut. "She was escorted out of her suite and down to the lobby. After that, nothing." The words spread through the lobby quicker than the music could cover. Donors whispered. A server froze mid-step with a tray. A manager hissed at staff to keep moving. Harold stepped forward, hand light on Clara's elbow. "We'll manage. Guests do not need to know." Daniel watched her shoulders stiffen. He saw calculation in her eyes again, but beneath it something harder fear pushed down and hidden. The younger guard raised a hand. "We have security footage, sir, but—" He hesitated. "It doesn't match our logs." Harold's head turned. "Explain." The bellhop with the luggage cart, he used an ID. "But the number doesn't exist in the system." The words cut through Daniel's chest. He gripped the rail tighter. Clara looked at Harold. "You told me it was nothing. You told me it was nothing." We're confirming details, Harold said smoothly. Don't jump to conclusions. It's my niece, she replied. Her tone had no edges left, only steel. The crowd noise grew. Guests craned their necks. A man in a tuxedo asked loudly if the event was safe. A woman clutched her pearls and demanded to know why police weren't visible. The orchestra faltered. Harold gestured sharply at the staff. Keep them calm, no external calls. Daniel stepped down from the landing. He crossed into the open lobby. Every head near the bar turned. Whispers sharpened. He ignored them. You saw it, he said to the younger guard. The guard blinked. Sir, Tell her, Daniel pressed. Tell Miss Vance what was in that footage, Harold snapped. Cross. You're finished here. Daniel didn't look at him. The cart wasn't right. Now her niece is missing. You think that's coincidence? Clara's eyes pinned him. For the first time, there was no irritation in her stare, only raw calculation. What did you see? A cart that didn't belong, Daniel said flatly. A call that didn't make sense. And a room full of people who would rather I vanish than be right. The guests shifted, uneasy. Every word carried weight now. Clara's jaw tightened. Find her. Harold started to object, but she cut him with a look. You heard me. Find her. Daniel met her gaze. That elevator didn't stop at guest floors. It went down. The lobby went still. Staff froze. Donors stared. Down? Clara repeated. To the sub-basement, Daniel said. No guest has access there. Not unless someone gave it, the younger guard whispered. Maintenance corridors, loading bays. Nobody watches them at night. Clara's hand closed over her clutch. She turned to Harold. You missed this. His expression didn't flicker. We'll sweep it now. She faced Daniel again. You're coming with us. Whispers rippled across the crowd. Someone muttered that it was madness. Another guest laughed nervously. A manager tried to guide donors back toward the ballroom. Daniel stood steady. Every glance around him said he didn't belong, that he had no place in this circle, that his voice should carry no weight. But Clara's stare didn't leave him. For the first time that night, he wasn't invisible. She spoke quietly, but the words cut through the room. If my niece is in danger, I don't care who's offended. You're with me. The crowd noise swelled again, uneasy and restless. The private elevator doors slid shut on an empty car. The mirrored surface reflected Daniel's face, tired, lined, and for once undeniable. The private elevator hummed down to the service level, carrying Clara, Harold, 2 junior guards, and Daniel standing a half step behind. The air was tight. Nobody spoke until the doors opened on concrete walls and dim fluorescence. The sub-basement smelled of bleach, metal, and the faint tang of diesel from the loading bay. Pipes ran along the ceiling. Doors lined the hall, most marked maintenance only. Clara's heels clicked once before she stopped, her voice low. Where would they take her? Daniel scanned the corridor. He knew these halls better than anyone. Not the obvious rooms. Somewhere forgotten. Harold gave a short laugh. This is absurd. We should wait for police. Clara turned on him, sharp. By the time they arrive, she could be gone. Her tone cut. Harold said nothing more. They moved past locked storage, laundry bins, service carts stacked in shadows. Every sound echoed too long. Daniel led them toward a corridor that curved out of sight. He kept his voice steady. Half these doors haven't been used in years. Renovations sealed some off, but not all. If someone wanted a place to wait unseen, this is where they'd go. The younger guard frowned. How do you know? Daniel answered without hesitation. I wrote the emergency plan for this hotel. I mapped every exit, every blind spot. Management shelved it when ownership changed. The guard said nothing. Clara studied Daniel a moment longer, then nodded for him to continue. They stopped at a bricked-off archway. A piece of plaster near the floor had crumbled. Daniel crouched and brushed dust aside. In the crack, a scrap of paper had been pushed through. He pulled it free. It was torn from a notepad. On it, drawn in colored pencil, was a shaky figure with long hair, next to a stick figure holding a balloon. Child's work. Clara's breath caught. Sophie. Daniel noticed more. Beside the paper scrap, a thin green ribbon caught in the crack. Clara's hand trembled. This morning I tied her hair with that ribbon. Daniel turned the scrap over. Nothing else. Just the drawing. He felt the heat rise in his chest. Not anger, but confirmation. She's here. Harold's voice was cold. It could be staged. Clara snapped. It's her handwriting. Don't tell me what I know. For a moment, silence pressed heavier than the air. The junior guards shifted uneasily. Daniel folded the scrap carefully and handed it to Clara. They left this to be found, which means they want you unsettled. They want control. Clara's jaw tightened. Why? Daniel held her gaze. Because it isn't ransom. It's leverage. Whoever took her knows you. Harold stepped forward. That's speculation. Dangerous speculation. Daniel didn't blink. It's the only thing that fits. A missing ID. A staged cart. A child hidden in a service level no guest should see. This wasn't random. It was built for tonight. Clara's eyes narrowed, studying him as if measuring the ground under her feet. Then she spoke, flat and sharp. Then we keep moving. I won't leave her here. She turned briefly to the junior guard. Record this, under Emergency Protocol Section 9.2. I authorize Daniel Cross as acting security advisor for this incident. The guard scribbled in his logbook, time-stamping the order. They pressed deeper into the sub-basement, each step louder than the last. For Daniel, every glance from staff, every dismissive word from management, every cold shoulder tonight sharpened into one truth. They had tried to erase him from the place he once held together, but now the one person who refused to look at him was the only one keeping pace beside him. The hallway ended in silence, and beyond it, another door, the kind no guest ever knew existed. The heavy door at the end of the corridor stood flush with the wall, paint peeling at the edges. No keypad, just an old handle, the kind nobody noticed until they needed it. Daniel placed his hand against the metal. Cold, he looked back at Clara. If they're moving her, it won't be random. They'll aim for a route no one questions. Kitchen passages, service halls, loading dock. Clara's eyes were sharp. You sound certain. I've walked these halls longer than anyone here, Daniel said. I know where they curve, where sound carries, where cameras don't reach. If I wanted to vanish, I'd take her through kitchens and out the dock by dawn. Harold folded his arms. You're building stories out of shadows. Daniel didn't look at him. Shadows don't leave drawings. Clara pulled the folded scrap from her clutch, her jaw set. We keep going. They pushed through the door into a corridor that funneled toward the banquet kitchen. The smell of roasted meat and hot oil rolled out to meet them. Staff bustled between stoves and counters, but every face turned as Clara entered. Silence fell in her wake. The head chef stepped forward, hands stained with sauce. Ma'am, no issues here. Daniel scanned the carts near the service door. Lids too clean, sheets pulled too tight, 2 trays that should have been warm, but carried no steam. He didn't point it out. Not yet. One of the junior guards whispered, Someone moved through here. Recently. Daniel nodded. Look at the floor. A faint line of moisture trailed toward the dock door. Wheels had cut through spilled ice. Dragged. Straight out. Clara's hand tightened on the scrap again. She's close. A clatter rang from the far end of the kitchen. A bellhop uniform disappeared behind a swinging door. Daniel moved first. The others followed. They pushed through into a narrow prep hall. The man in the uniform sprinted ahead, walkie-talkie crackling in his hand. Daniel ran hard, boots striking tile. The hall ended at another service stair, the uniform already vanishing down. "Hold!" Harold barked. But his voice was swallowed by distance. Daniel stopped at the top of the stair, chest heaving. He had chased enough men in these corridors to know when he wouldn't catch them. He turned back to Clara. He wasn't fleeing. He was leading. Her eyes darkened. "Where?" Daniel glanced at the stairwell, the echo of the radio still in his ears. "The dock. They're staging there." Harold shook his head. "This is beyond protocol. We should stand down." Daniel stepped closer, his voice steady but sharp. "Your niece is the leverage. This isn't ransom. They're not after money, they're after you. If they get her out of here, you'll never see her again." Clara's jaw set hard. "Then we don't let them." Daniel's breath came rough. He hadn't told anyone this in years, but the words pushed out. "My wife died because people ignored her warning. They called it an accident. I won't watch that happen again." The silence that followed was heavy, stripped of excuses. Clara met his eyes, not as a CEO measuring staff, but as a woman hearing truth she couldn't dismiss. "Then you stay with me," she said. Somewhere below, a door clanged shut. The sound echoed up the stairwell, a reminder that time was running thin. Daniel gripped the rail. "They're moving now." And all at once, the walls of the hotel didn't feel like shelter. They felt like a trap closing around them. The stairwell twisted upward in sharp turns, every landing echoing with their steps. Daniel pushed hard, lungs tight, but his stride never slowed. Clara followed close, her breath controlled, eyes locked forward. The two junior guards kept their weapons ready, though their faces betrayed nerves. Harold trailed, too calm for the pace, his hand brushing his jacket pocket, as though rehearsing something. At the final landing, a steel door stood marked roof access. Wind whistled faint through its seam. Daniel pressed his ear to the metal rotor blades, steady and rising. He looked back. Helicopter. "They're not walking her out. They're flying her," he added quickly. Helipad lights only activate with a master override from the sub-basement console. Someone with top-level clearance primed it at 1940. That means inside help. Clara's face drained of color, but her tone stayed hard. "Open it." The guards forced the latch. The door swung wide, and the rooftop air hit them cold, sharp, smelling of fuel. Floodlights cut the night sky. At the far end, near the helipad, two men in dark jackets held Sophie. She was small against their grip, her eyes wide above a strip of tape. Between them and the helicopter, another figure waited. Harold Stone stepped into the light, no longer trailing, no longer hiding. His voice carried above the blades. "You made this easier than I expected." Clara froze. "Harold," he gave her a smile without warmth. "Years of building your empire at my back. Years of loyalty bought with scraps. Tonight I take what's mine." Daniel shifted forward, every muscle tight. "You planned this from inside." Harold's gaze flicked to him. "The guard who wouldn't vanish. I warned them you were a problem. They didn't listen." His voice sharpened. "You won't leave this roof." The two men shoved Sophie closer to the helipad. She stumbled, muffled cry lost to the blades. Clara took a step, but Harold raised a hand. "One more move and she goes over the side." Daniel's chest burned. "You don't want her hurt. She's leverage. Without her, you have nothing." Harold's eyes narrowed. "True, which is why she'll live, as long as Clara signs over control before the board. One signature, and my life's work is mine. Clara's voice cut, cold as glass. You'll never run what you can't build, Harold smirked. You underestimate how easy people are to buy once you have the crown. His tone hardened. Tomorrow morning, the board votes on interim control. One signature tonight, or one unexplained absence, and your empire shifts, Clara. Sophie guarantees your cooperation. The guards shifted uneasily, torn between duty and shock. Daniel felt the weight of the moment. Harold had all the advantage. Still, he moved. Slow, steady. One step forward. You think you hold every card, Daniel said, voice flat. But men like you always forget one thing. Harold tilted his head. And what's that? Daniel's eyes fixed on Sophie. A father will never weigh his life the way you weigh money. With that, Daniel lunged. The nearest guard tried to block him, but Daniel drove his shoulder hard, knocking the man sideways. Sophie fell against the second man's grip, screaming behind the tape. Daniel tore at the arm holding her, dragging her free with raw strength. Gunfire cracked short, sharp bursts. The junior guards returned fire, pinning Harold's men near the helipad. Clara ran forward, pulling Sophie into her arms, shielding her. Harold stumbled back toward the helicopter. Daniel caught him by the jacket, yanking him away from the blades. You don't leave with her, Daniel said, voice sharp, breath hot. Harold struggled, eyes burning. You think you've won? You've ruined everything. Clara's voice cut through the chaos. No, Harold, you did that yourself. The fight raged around them, shouts, boots on concrete, the helicopter whining. Daniel forced Harold to the ground, pinning him as the guards closed in. For the first time all night, the balance shifted. Clara held Sophie tight, the child's sobs breaking against her shoulder. Daniel stood over Harold, chest heaving, every nerve on fire. For a moment, the rooftop seemed to freeze, the night air heavy, the floodlights harsh, the truth of betrayal laid bare. And then, from the stairwell below, more footsteps thundered upward. This was not over. The footsteps broke into the rooftop like a storm. Armed responders swept out of the stairwell, black uniforms cutting across the floodlights. In seconds, Harold's men were on the ground, restrained, weapons kicked aside. The helicopter pilot raised his hands, pulled out of the cockpit. The roar of blades faded into silence. One responder barked into his headset. Copy chain of custody initiated. Rooftop cam feed mirrored to off-site server. Proceed with arrest protocol. Clara stood with Sophie in her arms, the child clinging tight, her face pressed into the silver fabric of Clara's dress. Daniel stayed a step away, watching until her small sobs softened. He had no orders to give, no title anymore. But every instinct told him to hold position until she was safe. Harold spat curses as two officers hauled him upright. His suit was torn, cufflinks glinting against the concrete. He looked at Clara with raw fury. You'll regret this. The board needs me. They'll come back for me. Clara didn't answer him. Her eyes were steady, cold. She gave a single nod to the officers, and they pulled him away. One of the junior guards stepped closer to Daniel. His voice dropped. They'll write you out of the report. Pretend you were never here. Daniel almost laughed. That's nothing new. Clara heard him. She turned, still holding Sophie, and crossed the distance. Her words were even, measured, but carried weight. Tonight, everyone saw who mattered. Daniel shook his head. Tonight, they saw a man doing his job. Her gaze held his for a long moment. Then she lowered her voice so only he heard. Your job isn't finished. Not while your son waits upstairs. The reminder struck harder than any insult Harold had thrown. Daniel nodded once. He turned from the floodlights and walked toward the stairwell. The climb down was slow, muscles heavy, mind running on fragments. When he reached the mezzanine, the air was quieter. The ballroom had emptied, staff moving silently to clear tables. He slipped through the side corridor to the staff quarters. Inside the small room, Ethan stirred on the bed. He blinked, sat up. "Dad?" Daniel closed the door gently. "I'm here." The boy rubbed his eyes. "You look tired." "I am." Daniel sat at the edge of the bed. "But you're safe. That's what matters." Ethan leaned against him, small shoulder pressing into his side. The sketchbook lay open on the desk. A new drawing showed two figures, one tall with a badge, one smaller beside him, standing under a square window that looked like the lobby doors. Daniel traced the lines with his finger. His throat tightened, but his voice stayed steady. "That's good work." The boy smiled faintly. "I made you taller again." Daniel nodded. "You did." Outside the window, the city lights glowed steady. Inside, the silence felt earned. For the first time that night, Daniel let himself exhale. He had shouted against a crowd that wanted him invisible. He had stood where he was not welcome. He had been treated as if nothing he said could matter. But in the end, he had been the one voice that saved what could not be replaced. If you've ever been pushed aside, told you didn't belong, and still held your ground, I'd like to hear your story too. It reminds us all we're not the only ones carrying that weight. The boy leaned closer. Daniel rested a hand on his son's shoulder. The noise of the lobby was gone, the floodlights far behind. What remained was this quiet, steady, real. And in that stillness, Daniel knew he had kept his promise.